COVID, climate, China. The issues expected to be front and center as leaders of the Quad Alliance prepare to meet in person.
For a closer look, Angela Mancini, partner and head of APAC Markets at Control Risks, joins us live now for more on this. Angela, what's the Quad hoping to achieve here?
Well, this summit is actually quite significant. Of course, it's the second time they're meeting, but the first time in person. And underlying everything, obviously, is China. They're not going to say that publicly, but that is the kind of the issue underpinning everything that we're going to see. But there's some very specific objectives that they're trying to achieve. I mean, look for pronouncements on things like cybersecurity, on things like intelligence sharing, on things like sharing of new technologies like 5G. But of course, a big one's going to be the COVID vaccine. So when we had the virtual summit back in March, the commitment was made at that time to have 1 billion doses of the COVID vaccine distributed primarily around Asia and Southeast Asia, and we weren't able to do that given the Delta variant outbreak in India. So we'll look for some pronouncements on that as well. But basically what they're doing is laying the foundation for longer term cooperation. And I think what's most notable about the summit is this is proving the Quad is here to stay. This has moved from, kind of a loose grouping, a kind of a conversation years ago around, ongoing cooperation in a very informal way to a pretty formal body, that grouping that's, again, that's here to stay. So this summit's really cementing that.
And tell us then why the US is placing such strong emphasis on wooing allies in the Indo-Pacific. And can you see this grouping expand?
Yeah, I can see it expand over time. I mean, I think, the U.S. sees China, of course, as a strategic competitor. And I think what's significant is, in the prior administration, the relationship, hardened. And there was a lot of hope, I think, from some that when we had the Biden administration come in, that we would have a relationship that was less erratic, less bombastic, and perhaps more cordial and more constructive. That hasn't happened. It has been a more deliberate administration, but the relationship is still at a low point. And it looks like it's going to continue that way for some time. I think the challenge is going to be how do the U.S. and China actually react to each other as they're each kind of upping the ante, as it were. But I think, the U.S., it's significant because we've had several U.S. presidencies that have tried to actually, to use the word, pivot from the Middle East or other regions to Asia, and the Biden administration's actually doing it, as witness the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So I think what's significant here, to the point, is the U.S. does see China as, a strategic competitor. It is actually moving economic, diplomatic, military resources into the region, focusing on this with loose groupings of alliances and more formal alliances. And this is, something that they consider very, very significant.
Well, Angela, that pivot certainly does appear to be happening. But what are the implications for Asian nations as this US-China Gulf continues to grow, though?
Yeah, I think, the main thing that we see here in Asia, sitting in the region, as you all know, is that countries here don't want to choose. And that's, a pretty obvious thing that we talk about quite a lot. But actually, not only do they not want to have to choose, they don't want to have to, frankly, deal with the the competition between U.S. and China in any event. I mean, most countries here would strongly prefer that the U.S. and China could improve the relationship. I mean, most countries here in Asia have very significant domestic challenges around socioeconomic development, around access to healthcare, improving education, especially with COVID now that has come to the fore. And so I think, the U.S.-China relationship, if it does harden, it just makes things so much more complicated for countries here. And so I think, clearly, especially ASEAN is going to hedge and it doesn't want to have to choose. But I think quite a lot of countries are just hoping that, things will evolve and not harden even further.
Thanks as always, Angela. Angela Mancini, partner and head of APAC Markets at Control Risks Singapore.